I guess we can go ahead and get started. We're waiting for one more colleague, but she'll walk in, I imagine, in a moment. So, welcome everyone. This is Ask the Brony Psychologist, and I see a lot of familiar faces from our gathering yesterday. This is a little different, and what will happen is we're each going to take just a moment to introduce ourselves and make a couple of comments, and then we'll ask anybody who has a question, and it can be about our research, it can be about people's reactions to the fandom or the fandom in general, or what's the meaning of life, you know. 42, yeah. And if you have a question though, then we'll ask you to line up, and it works best that we just simply take one person after another, so we're not having to pick people's raised hands and that. So, and we'll just simply spend the time trying to answer as many of your questions as we can in that. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Dr. Pat Edwards. I'm a PhD clinical psychologist. I also go by my OC pony is Dr. Psychology. And we will continue to remind you also, if you haven't visited our website, BronyStudy.com, please do. We post our results there, so you can see a lot of what we found in the surveys, and we also kind of note upcoming events that we're going to be attending or interviews that have been posted. We're doing lots and lots of interviews of that. I wanted to mention one thing. It might come up in a question, but I wanted to just sort of make note of it. And yesterday I thanked you all, and we keep doing this, we keep thanking the herd, because we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for your dedication to the fandom and your willingness to kind of step forward. You took the risk of letting these psychologists come into your midst and ask questions, and I think what you found is, you know, we're not here to make you look bad. We report what we find, and what we found speaks wonderfully of you all as a group. So again, we'd like to thank you. I'd also like to thank you for a number of other people. We have talked to parents, we have talked to reporters, we have talked to people who produce movies, and they all tend to say the same thing. They are extremely surprised by this fandom. You all make these things possible. Your approach to life, your approach to each other, your openness, your love and tolerance make this happen, and it really makes it possible. So it's not just us as researchers, but there are a lot of people who need to be giving you credit. I do want to mention one other thing, because I think people make some certain assumptions, and we thank you for helping us out. There wouldn't be a Brony study. But also, if it wasn't for who you are, if it wasn't for the positive nature that, we might not be as likely to do this, because we are not paid anything to do this. When I checked out from the hotel, I had to pay the whole bill myself. We don't have a grant. We receive no reimbursement. The con's not paying us. We do this out of our own pocket. And I think partly because we too are struck by the fandom and the positive nature of it and that. So there are a lot of people responding very positively to what you all have created. And so again, I thank you and we thank you.
My name is Daniel Chadbourne. I have a master's in psychology. My OC is Professor Euconium. I have a very unpopular and never updated Tumblr blog if you don't want to follow me. My research interests have really varied. I've delved in everything from social and developmental psychology. My master's thesis was on the evolution of the mind and creative behaviors and shamanism. In addition to that, I kind of bring the sort of Brony side to the group. I'm sort of very involved in the fandom, like Dr. Edwards. I'm up to date on all the episodes. and I try to keep up with a little more of the social media and even the drama within, just to kind of keep up with what's going on with the fandom.
Good morning, I'm Jan Griffin, and I'm the newest member of the team, and I'm Dr. Significant. And of course, I love this because I'm kind of a blingy person, so the team had a bet on how long was it before I'd get ears. I would have wings, but they didn't have green wings that goes along with my character. I'm the sort of scientific statistical person. I'm the one that writes up the research for presentation at our professional conferences. And as Dr. Edwards has mentioned several times, we've presented at least at 8 different venues, and those are 8 different studies, and those are different than what we talked about yesterday. So we have a wide variety of data. The information is presented on our website, the BronyStudy.com, but we'll also be writing up an article for our professional journal, which of course will put information as a link into our website. But this has really been fun for me. I've taught for over 35 years, and my colleagues that are my age are all retiring, and people ask me, you know, aren't you going to retire? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've gotten my 5 kids raised, they're grown, they're out of the house. Now I can do what I love, which is research on cool topics. So thank you very much. You've been very welcoming. I also am the one who goes around and takes a lot of the pictures. We'll have collages on the website, and I love it. Thank you so much for a wonderful
I'm Marcia Redden. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I am retired after over 30 years in private practice. I taught for a little while, and now I'm really fully retired. I still maintain my license, but you've got to really cry over the phone for me to see you. Dr. Edwards and I got this study started in 2011, and we have just been blown away by the response that we get. And we certainly do thank each and every one of you, your parents, your therapists, your friends, those who have supported you, and you who have supported us in this experiment. We are going from just simply collecting data to a real full experiment on a before and after with some college students. That's going to be the thing we do in the fall. So we're all moving forward, and we are diversifying in some ways. I have 3 grandchildren, and I am disappointed that Granny Smith is not one of the major ponies.
Okay, why don't we, I guess, do we have the staff person here? Okay, why don't we form the line over here? So if you have a question, if you'll get in line over here. Also, let me mention while they're forming up, Dr. Griffin, Jan, this is her first BronyCon, and we were joking last night, it's like, how are we going to take her back to Spartanburg, South Carolina after she's seen BronyCon? You know,
it's very hard for us to go back. It's very hard for us to go back to academia after this. Our students are never this excited.
My husband's downstairs buying Brony stuff for my granddaughter as we speak.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Where do you see both the fandom and the show going from here?
Well, I mean, I've heard rumors that Hasbro's talking about extending out like 5 seasons or so. And I guess my feeling is, as long as the show is being produced. I think there will be bronies, also as long as Hasbro doesn't change things too much. But of course it will have to change, and we don't want to see the same static thing in 5 years. But my suspicion is the fandom, what we've seen, look at how many people are here compared just to last year. I suspect the fandom will continue to grow. It seems to be getting younger. We're seeing a lot more younger fans than that. So that's my feeling. Anybody else?
I think when it comes to the amount of consumption, I think bronies are almost directly responsible for the quality, the variety of the toys that Hasbro's producing, and Hasbro being a major company that's really about profits. As long as bronies are consuming, the show's probably going to keep going on because bronies are going to keep consuming. And so I don't see it, personally, I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon because, I mean, it's probably the biggest thing Hasbro has to offer right now.
Well, another thing is that you don't see Star Trek movies anymore. They're doing reruns on television, but you've still got Trekkies. So, you know, I mean, the first law of science is future resembles the past. So I would expect this to go on. That there will always be some bronies. It may not be this big.
But I think we're a couple years away from that.
Yeah, I think we're years away from that.
First of all, I think Granny Smith rocks. I really appreciate the work you guys do. I'm actually a sociology major, so I completely get all of this. One thing I'm curious about is what you said about how you guys don't get grants or anything for this. Is there a pushback you feel from for studies of this nature? Because personally, I feel when you get involved in a fandom like this and you see just the positive nature, there's so much that people can learn about just the positivity and the acceptance. So it's one of those things of like, what does it take if there is pushback to get that reality out there, that there is a lot that can be learned? Well,
let me tell you, the first presentation that we made was in 2012 to the American Orthopsychiatric Association. It was a meeting sponsored by the American Orthopsychiatric Association. And they asked us to submit our presentation for publication. They could not find anyone to edit it. Nobody wanted to touch it.
Yeah, I think, and I personally think this is probably in 4 or 5 years, I'll be thanking the bronies again, because we have found the field of fandoms in general has just been ignored by social sciences, psychology, sociology, and we are really breaking ground. And I think because of your readiness to come forward, share with us, and because of what we're finding, we're hoping that this will lead our field to begin to take more seriously. Because I think in 5 or 10 years, we need internet fandoms that are pro-social. We need groups that are promoting positive behaviors and attitudes. And so our hope is that we're breaking the ice and that then other social scientists will take notice and start, they won't hear fandom and think deviance. They'll hear fandom and say, we need to study it more.
I think also, we all are from small universities. We're all from small universities, and we all chose to go into the field of teaching. And we love research, so we do research. Well, okay, not, yeah, sorry, we have our clinical person who actually made money, the rest of us are professors.
We're teaching.
Yes, who teach. And so we love this so much, we do it, and we're making an impact, but we're not at the kind of university that could probably get a big grant to do this. Usually you need graduate students. And that takes time, and quite frankly, you know, I'd kind of be the person to do it. I don't want to take the time away from contact with you guys and doing the research to get the money. I mean, we're willing to foot the bill as much as we're able to do because we love it.
One of the most popular princess is Princess Luna, and what does that tell you given her canon personality and how she relates to the Brony? Let me put this another way. Why is Princess Luna so popular with the fandom?
Why is Princess Luna so popular with the fans? We actually have some data. The second survey that we put out, where we got thousands, 12,000 responses from, we had actually asked, who's your favorite pony? And we left it open-ended, and I had the pleasure of going through that and coding it into numbers, and I say that a little sarcastically. I think we ended up with something like between 50 and 70 different categories. I mean, some people responding only once with a background pony that I don't think anyone else here could name. I had a couple of OCs. I had a couple of 1980s My Little Ponies that I had to just go look up. They got the code of 80. And Princess Luna did get a decent proportion. If I remember correctly, it was a couple of hundred. And this was at season 2. I think right as she was getting that first Halloween episode. But it became really unwieldy to go in and look at all of these different characters with personality, and we're using better personality tests now, and that's not something that we asked with the newest survey. It's definitely something I think we've talked about maybe doing, looking at the villains, both redeemed and so like Luna and maybe Discord, and why is Discord someone's favorite pony? Why would Luna?
I think we may, because of the questions and comments we've been getting, I think we may go back and, besides just saying who's your favorite of the main 6, is we may go in and start looking at secondary ponies, the villains, the princesses, and try to get a little bit of a sense for how important those are. Also, let me just say with Luna, my sense is, you know, one thing that sets her apart was she had this conflict with her big sister, sent away for 1,000 years, and then comes back. So psychodynamically, I'd wonder if people are kind of drawn to Luna who had issues with older siblings, you know, in a sense that, you know, they might identify a little bit with that aspect.
She's had to learn to fit in with a different crowd, you know, that 1,000-year gap of language and knowledge.
And change her voice. After the royal.
I have another take on this. She's got a really cool costume.
She is cute.
Got her own set of guards.
The
Really
night guards
cool.
are kind of neat.
Hey guys, as a Brony that's out of college and, you know, a little bit older than maybe the typical Brony fan, I'm just curious if you guys could talk about anything you've noticed about the different age groups within the community, you know, high school versus college versus after college.
Well, one of the things that we have run up against is that because we are psychologists, we must follow the American Psychological Association Code of Ethics. And they do not permit us to do research on anyone under the age of 18 without parental consent. Well, getting parental consent over the internet is a joke. You know, how many of you all are going to sign it with your left or your right hand, you know, just to...
Are you over 18?
Yeah,
Yes.
you over 18.
Yes, I am.
You know, so that's part of the reason. And part of the reason why we keep asking some questions over and over again is because these 17-year-olds turn to 18-year-olds and we can then use their data. But that's part of the problem. We basically go from about 18 to about 30. and use that age group. And one of the things that that does is it keeps the data from being too skewed by the much older bronies. And we love the much older bronies, and we do look at their data, but we don't necessarily put it into the data pool with the analysis.
There is a difference somewhat based upon the typology, in that we tend to see the younger bronies come in more heavily in the social brony group. They're outgoing, and often they're making it a very important part of their life and that. Whereas some of the older bronies tend to fall a little more in the hipster group, where it's important, but they're not necessarily finding guidance, and they may not make it a central part of their life.
And it would make sense from an identity standpoint that someone who's older, who's already gone through that sort of identity development, has a pretty clear sense of where their identity lies, that it's a part of it, but it might not be that central focus. And that's why they might end up in that sort of independent or hipster.
They may literally have their brony suit in the closet, and they take it out at times and wear it, but they don't wear it all the time, because other times they have their doctor's outfit on or their mother outfit on.
Hi, thank you for coming down, first of all.
It's our pleasure.
I have more of a comment than a question.
Okay.
I have 3 favorite ponies, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rarity. And I think those 3 match my personality the best. I'm shy like Fluttershy, but I can be very excitable about things like Pinkie Pie. And I think I should be Rarity because I'm a sketch artist. So
You're special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to know what you guys think of that.
Well,
we think it's cool.
Yeah. And I think yesterday we stressed that with our studies and our data, we talk about, 50,000 bronies, and here's kind of what you see. But I keep stressing that each of you is unique and special, and there are always going to be people who will like different combinations of ponies for different reasons, and that's totally okay. I do think, and you stressed the one thing we tend to find, people usually choose ponies because they identify with them. You just see more than one pony, you see 3.
But the other thing is that you sound like you are really getting to know yourself really well, and that's cool.
Just as a note, I like to see myself as Rainbow Dash, but when I've taken those Who's Your Favorite Pony quizzes online, and I've taken them multiple times, tried to change the answers in multiple quizzes, I come out every time Applejack. Yes.
Well, yeah, I really do identify with Pinkie Pie, but I come out Rarity. Now, wait a minute. Let me tell you that thing has never been validated. And as scientists, we look at it and chuckle. So, it's cool, it's fun, but it ain't scientific.
Okay, yet I want to find out who did it and do the reliability and validity and scientific analysis on it.
Maybe that'll be our next big research point. We'll make it valid and reliable. We've got the favorite pony data now. We can do it.
I know you've been doing this for a couple of years now, but what motivated you to do the research in the beginning? And was your reactions the same as other people you tell about the fandom and the research you do on it?
Are we ready to tell them?
Yeah, I'll tell them just real quick. And I'll embarrass him, but is Will here? He's supposed to be here.
All right, he's gone.
He may be hiding.
Forget about it. I mean, he knows where Dad is. That's all that counts.
No, it all started back in 2011 when my then 16-year-old son Will, after I hadn't seen him for a month because we were traveling, I said, "So Will, what are you up to?" And he said, "Well, I'm into something new." And he told me he was a brony. And I said, "A what?" And then he told me, and I said, you gotta be kidding me. And, but he said, Dad, it's a big thing on the internet. I went on, I was surprised, you know, with the artistic work. I was surprised with a lot of what I was seeing. So I told Dr. Redden, and we both kind of had that Twilight Sparkle, we must science this immediately. And so the first thing I did was look at the literature, nothing. You know, nothing about fandoms. So I found 4 bronies, and I did an in-depth kind of couple hours interview with each. And one of the things that surprised me that I never would have guessed was the WWPD. What would a pony do? The guidance function.
We had lines standing up to talk to us from students and colleagues, you know, from other schools. One of the women who had the poster right across from me said, if you ever come back, I am not going to be across from you because nobody ever came to talk to me. So, but we had a lot of interest. And next, this coming Friday, we're taking another poster to the American Psychological Association, and this will be the first, as far as we know, the first time that anything about bronies has gone to that level.
And you may have gotten a little bit of a sense from this. We empathize with what you all go through because I feel like in many ways it's the same thing with, I mean, when we tell our colleagues, we get this like negative blowback. And it's a little sad because, you know, we like to think scientists, we're objective, but everybody brings their biases into it. And so we are in the process, just like you are with family and friends and others, of educating people and watching as they go, whoa, and then some of them will watch and some of them will probably come away and become bronies, you know. So we're going through the same process that you all do.
I will mention, in addition to the Southeast, I presented 2 posters to the Southwest Psychological Association in April, so right after they did. And it was the same situation. We not only had crowds, but we had more. I could probably go and count the number of participants on all the other student and faculty posters, and I think combined we had as many as everyone else did. And I had a colleague I work with at my university afterwards said, so this friend I know in the developmental psych community messaged me and said that she ran into you and had to go back to her hotel room and watch a couple of episodes. While we may get some sort of iffy, you know, eyes and then wondering why we're doing this, there are a lot of people within the community who, once they see the data, really go, oh, so this is pretty serious, and this is something we can actually look at. I mean, this is good.
Okay, I have one more comment. We worked with a student. Dr. Edwards and I worked most closely with the student in doing the research, and she put together her own poster and presented it at our university. It was with other students from other universities in the upstate of South Carolina, and there were probably 75 to 80, and I mean, they had mathematicians, they had economists, they had biochemists, and all sorts of areas of posters. She won the best poster award for her brony. People recognize it as very respectable science.
Hi there.
Hello.
It seems like some of the defining characteristics of the Brony fandom are the friendliness, openness, acceptance, also the commitment to friendship, and the questioning of traditional gender roles. I wondered if you found in your research or your readings a precedent for this type of fandom, maybe in another fandom or in a social movement in general.
I think just because there's so little research on fandom in general, but I think I would guess, or at least hypothesize, that fandom could be a very strong driving force. You take something like Star Trek, which promotes the sort of very equal, I mean, the original series, you had a very diverse, multinational crew. and they're really working to promote these ideals. And I would imagine that if someone were doing a lot of research looking at that, you might have seen a lot of the earlier fans or the people really rallying behind this sort of ideal, if there was sort of like a guidance function in the episode. Especially if you get into some of the episodes, they do tend to have some message to them. But there's just not a whole lot on fandom to really maybe look at a precedent. And maybe as we continue our research, we might find something.
One thing about it too is that the questioning of traditional gender roles has been going on for about 40 years. I mean, you know, you take the women's liberation movement back in the 60s and 70s, and it was going on back then.
But this is,
I think when women began entering the workforce, doing something besides teaching and social work, we began to question typical gender roles. And now, you know, people don't really raise much of an eyebrow when they hear about stay-at-home dads. You know, mama works and dad stays home and takes care of the kids because mama's got a better income. Okay, we have 10 minutes. Yes.
Hello everyone. I'm not sure if you remember me. I ran into a few of you last night outside the convention center. I missed the panel last night, so I figured I'd ask it here. What does my favorite pony, being Rainbow Dash, say about me?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, what we've, yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head too, not having to.
Right now, I'll tell you what, that's going to be up on the website as soon as we get back too.
I know the one, because what we did is we looked at, for one thing, the personality of individuals, and did their personality seem to be attached. And I do remember that more extroverted individuals tended to choose Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and I think to a little lesser degree, Applejack. More introverted individuals tended to choose Fluttershy, Twilight Sparkle, and that. And so what we did find is that your personality, and I think it's because of an identification, people tend to choose their favorite pony because that pony reminds them of who they are. Although when people choose a pony that they would like to be, they typically tend to choose Rainbow Dash, Applejack, and Pinkie Pie, because who wouldn't like to be more assertive, number one, and partying, you know? So your personality seems to, it seems to say something about who you are, your personality.
Hello, I actually wanted to go back to the diversity and feminism of gender norms idea that you just brought up, and you brought up in the other panel as well. Something that I get a lot of as a feminist from my non-brony friends is, you're a feminist, why do you like My Little Pony? And I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was really interesting why I would be asked that, since it is a matriarchal, mostly utopian society, right? But evidently there's this idea of femininity wrapped up inside that show. What do you think of that? I know I'm just springing it on you.
I've heard that argument before.
Yeah.
I keep up with a lot of the online groups, and some of them are much less nice in saying it than that.
Oh yeah.
It might be sort of the idea of it. I mean, I know what I know about the sort of gender norms and what we've looked at. Like, what we found is that when it comes to gender trait stereotyping and gender role stereotyping, so what roles men and women should do and what traits are masculine or feminine, while there are some differences within the community, if you take all of the female bronies and all of the male bronies, the female bronies are going to be less gender stereotyped. But I made it important to note, because this is some of the data we presented at one of the conferences, is that while there's some differences within the community, when you take all of the bronies and compare them to non-bronies, bronies are less likely to use gender trait stereotyping, less likely to use gender role stereotyping, either masculine or feminine.
You know, the other thing is that feminism does not mean that you can't be feminine.
From a psychological point of view, there's a lot of data to suggest that individuals who tend to show a mix between the sort of masculine and feminine traits generally benefit from a wide array of positive psychological effects. And I think the ponies tend to show, you have, Applejack and Rainbow Dash who show a lot of what we would call, not masculine, we don't call it masculine and feminine anymore, it's expressiveness and instrumentality. They tend to show a pretty good mix. While they are female characters, they don't, it's not so sort of overly feminine, you can argue, that there's this balance there. And again, you don't have to, you don't have to say, well, I'm a feminist, but that means I can't be feminine. Yeah. It's like saying I'm a man and I can't be a little feminine. I can't cry every now and then.
Thank you.
Hey, in my theory in watching both the explosion of the Brony fandom and the blowback against it is that it's more of a perfect storm in challenging the male gender role. Because like Kim Possible came and went and that pretty much did the same thing, but My Little Pony, that has more of an impact to it. I was wondering in your studies if you found research on that, on the effects on men in the fandom, and also in the larger society, if you've seen more of a challenge of the male gender identity, like you said with the back at the feminist movement, how that started changing, and if you've now starting to see the male side of that change, anything along that.
Well, I think that there was a perception of the roles of men change, of masculinity changing. I don't know that it in fact changed. I think that may have been a perception. If you go to YouTube, there is a brief PBS presentation on the new masculinity. And they talk about how perceptions of masculinity are changing. One of the things that I see that's very positive is that it opens up a lot of avenues. When you talk about changing in gender roles, it opens up a lot of avenues for people to be who they are and to be happy. I don't think I would have been happy as a stay-at-home mom. I worked my whole time. My daughter would not be happy as a stay-at-home mom. I had a mom who worked and she wasn't happy as a stay-at-home mom. But I think that there's a difference between the reality and the perception. And let me tell you that when you try and tease that out scientifically, you're going to get a headache.
I think we're down to about 5 minutes,
yeah.
So we will, when we're done, we'll be outside so we can field more questions. So let's take one more, and then I had a little statement I wanted to make.
There's a lot of talk in this fandom, and in fandoms in general, there's a lot of, it's fairly obvious, at least it seems to me as a layperson, that people use this very often with things like OCs, who is my favorite pony, what pony do I most resemble? They use this almost to resolve identity crises. And I wonder, is there, and some people may think of me as the bad guy today for asking this question, is there a possibility that retreating too far into a pony identity, an OC, or one of the main six, or whoever, is it possible that retreating too far into that could actually be psychologically harmful for someone? And please, everyone keep in mind, I have a big Macintosh tattoo.
I'm not a bad guy. I'm one of you. He's not a bad guy. I guess what I would say is that with anything, even things that can be wonderfully good, if you go too far into it, there's always that possibility, you can lose friends, you can disconnect from your job, you can become too obsessed.
Moderation.
So, moderation, I think, is usually the proper path to take.
And I would have said the same thing, so.
That's the clinician, but listen, I wanted, and again, we want to thank you all profusely. We will be outside, so you can come and catch us with other questions. But I did want to make one comment because I had several people come up and ask me, and I was waiting to see if we'd get a question. And for those of you who didn't get to ask your question, I'm sorry, but thanks for getting up. But we sometimes ask whether it is always a good idea to tell people that you're a brony. You know, should especially, young people, old people, should you always stand up and say, I'm a brony, live with it? The answer that I would give as a clinician is, it's not always a good idea. That you really have to take into account the reaction that you're going to get. Because there's sometimes, and I think we see it, some individuals may disclose it and unexpectedly get so much blowback that they don't possibly know how to handle it and what to do with it. So I think it's the kind of thing you need to talk with people, particularly parents. It's great if their children can tell them and you can talk with them and you can be supportive. But you need to think about it before you kind of jump up and tell people, because it can have some blowback and some people are not ready. As a clinician, I have people at times tell me their secrets and say, should I tell others? And sometimes I'm saying, yeah, it's time, tell your parents. And other times, not yet. You need to do some more preparation for it. So I just wanted to share that with you because that's a question that
I had a talk to a couple of people, and just very briefly with this, talk to a couple of people about something similar. When we talk about the types of bronies, we have the secret bronies, high guidance, but no disclosure. They're not telling anyone they are. And they made the comment that, could we argue that these secret bronies are secret out of necessity and not choice? And I would argue that any secret brony, anyone who's getting that guidance function, is not getting it out of choice. It's because there's some factor. They can't tell their parents, they can't tell their boss, might not be okay to come out to their friends. And it might just be a not yet. And as the brony community becomes more accepting, I think that willingness to do so will be more likely.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, BronyStudy.com takes the survey.